not prepared!
5 days have passed since the new Castle Nathria expansion came out, so now we can take a better look of what the meta is looking like, so you guys know what would be a good idea to maybe spend some dust on. It's still probably not super amazing for you to be spending too much dust, because we are yet to see some nerfs, which will probably happen maybe in like 10 days from now. But yeah, if you want to be playing something new, here are several good options. If you enjoy what I'm doing, a like and subscribe would be awesome, and also don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching, which would be a great way to support me while also improving in the game. Now let's check out the decks. This is what the meta for HS replay looks like for the last 3 days in top 1000 Legend, and as you can see, we definitely have a few pretty good outliers. And it seems like Hunter is the big winner of the bunch because it has a whole 3 archetypes at the top. Mage is actually falling off a bit, but it's still definitely a very viable option if you know what you're doing with it. At the bottom we have several other archetypes people are fooling around with, but as you can see they're not doing as amazing. From Diamond to Legend, here's what it looks like again for the last 3 days, and it kinda looks pretty much the same, even though Mage is a little bit higher this time. Again, at the bottom we have several different archetypes, but they're not doing as amazing, at least as a whole archetype. Maybe there are some exact decks that are doing better than others. Now let's start off with the first deck for the top 5, which will be Naga Priest, which has really rose in power and popularity across the last few days. Naga Priest was a pretty powerful archetype back then, even though it slightly fell off, but now it has several very powerful tools to its disposal, and it really is an amazing deck to climb with. The new location it received really helps because not only it gives it the buffs it really wants, but it also gives it card draw, which is something Priest has always loved. We still have the core pieces of the good old Naga Priest, but now we have new tools like Pelagos, which is basically a blessing on a stick, and we also have the new partner in crime, which is just absolutely busted in this deck. And you can do some crazy stats very fast. Boon of the Ascendant is also pretty awesome, because this is actually something you cannot silence. I mean, you can silence the taunt part, but the stats will remain the same, so if you copy something with already good stats, the minion will remain very big, even when silenced. We also have Najak and Samuro for some good board disruption, and you also have a ton of card draw with your Handmaiden. Matchup wise we don't have too much stats yet, but this is what it looks like from Diamond to Legend. You will have mixed results against Hunters, Quest Priest will be hard for ya, but everything else looks pretty good. Mulligan wise, going first and second you will always want to have your Serpent Wig, and the 1-drop Vicious Litter Spear also makes a lot of sense, so you start comboing off your wigs. Surprisingly, Samuro is also considered a keep when going first, which is not something I would usually do, but it's a very large man, and if you slap a buff on it, it will definitely annihilate the opponent. The location is also pretty good obviously, as well as Murkwater Scribe, and also Thrive in Shadows is gonna help you find your Serpent Wig. If you already have Serpent Wig in hand though, maybe Thrive in Shadows is not such an amazing idea. But you could still use it to find your Bless, which is another not so bad keep. After that you can see a significant drop off in stats, so you might want to think twice before keeping these. On the coin, however, this is what the situation looks like, and surprisingly Samuro drops off a little bit lower here, even though I would definitely consider keeping him when going second. Shadow Word Devour becomes a lot more keepable because your opponent is going to be the first putting stuff on the board, so it would be a nice way to suck it off. The Priestess becomes a lot more keepable as well because you have the coin here, so it's going to be easier for you to cheat out extra mana, as well as the Handmaiden, again because you have the coin, it's going to be easier for you to cheat out extra card draw that way. And even Amalgam becomes pretty decent because you should be able to actually copy something off. Against certain matchups, definitely consider keeping Najak as well, and it's actually pretty surprising that Thrive in Shadows is this low when going second. I guess if you already have your good spells, sure, but if you don't have your Serpent Wig, I would definitely consider keeping the Shadow as well. For other good Priest decks, we still have Quest Priest doing well, with not so big of a sample size. And there's also this Blessed Priest out there, which is also pretty good, but apparently it's a little bit harder to pilot and not as good as the Naga variant. Boar Priest is actually having a positive win rate even across HS replay, which is not something you usually see, but maybe people finally started learning how to play this deck properly. On the number 2 spot we have Face Hunter, and I already showed you a very similar deck like this, with a guide with it, so you might want to check it out. The only difference here is we have Brucon instead of 1 extra collateral damage. We also have a Trog instead of the baddie guest, but I think everything else looks pretty much the same. The deck is pretty powerful, and it's a lot more board-centric than your typical Face Hunter, because you have a lot of wild seed synergies. and those tend to really flood up the board. We still have Raj in this one, which is definitely a card you might not craft for this deck and still try it and see if you like it. And same goes for Barak Kotobay, you just clap in an extra collateral damage and that should be fine. Matchup wise, as you can see, Beast Hunter is gonna be awkward for you, as well as Imp Warlock is gonna be close to 50, but a little bit under. Same goes for Pure Paladin, but everything else is pretty decent. Mulligan wise, going first, and second most probably, Wild Spirits is gonna be a great keep, and you can even keep Raj when going first because it's a great minion to tempo out. Spirit Poacher, Arelon, and Iron Deep Shrug also make a lot of sense, but I would not really be considering keeping Barak Kotobane when going first. Not unless I'm already curving out perfectly. You could also consider keeping Vicious Slither Spear, but definitely don't keep both 1-drops. It's either Iron Deep Shrug or Vicious Slither Spear, and in most cases the Trog is probably better. And if you already have a good 1-drop, you might want to keep some buffs for it as well. K9 is also not a bad keep, and Stack Charge could be a nice little removal for you as well. When on the coin, however, again, you definitely want a lot of Wild Seed synergies, and Barak Kotobane here definitely becomes a lot more keepable, and you could even consider keeping something like Twin Bow Terracoil, because if you do something like a turn 3 Twin Bow Terracoil into Wild Spirits, that is absolutely insane. Vicious Slither Spear is still pretty decent, but as you can see the Trog is not as amazing because on turn 2 people usually have ways to deal with the Trog, even with just from the board or with a hero power or something. For other good hunter decks, like I said, we also have Beast Hunters doing pretty well, as well as Quest Hunters. And for Beast Hunter we have both the 40 variant and the 30 variant still working well. Beast Hunter from the past, exactly the same with 0 new cards, is also still working pretty good, so if you have that already, you might want to keep pushing with it. Other than that, we don't really have any more archetypes for Hunter right now, but given the fact you have 3 tier 1 or tier 2 archetypes for it, that is pretty good. For Imp Warlock, here's the best performing deck in Top 1000 Legend. People started including Akani in this one again, which we all know is a very disruptive card, and it can definitely stall out your opponent, and that way you basically get to win yourself an extra turn and probably save your board. People were also using Demonic Assault, which is definitely a very decent card because you get to use it reactively, but you can also just go face with it too. This variant is not running Tamsin, which is interesting, but yeah, I get it. Tamsin is kind of a card you want to be using when you're actually losing the game, which doesn't happen too often with this deck. And we also have Piggyback Imp in this one, which is not a bad card at all. Matchup wise, from Diamond to Legend, you can see a lot of green stuff. Aside from Naga Priest, Skeleton Mage, and also some of the Shamans, you should be having a very easy climb with this one. Mulligan wise, going first and second, the Vial Library is always going to be an amazing keep. Wicked Shipment is also a great way to start you off in the game, as well as the Flustered Librarian, and even Imkim Rafam makes the cut, because it's a nice card to be looking forward to as soon as turn 6. Flame Imp is also pretty decent, and Fiendish Circle is pretty awesome as well. Bloodbound Imp is not bad on 2, and if you're already curving out well, Mischievous Imp can be an insane bomb turn as soon as turn 4 as well. Depending on the matchup, even Voidwalker might make sense, but I won't usually keep anything from the bottom here. When on the coin, like I said again, Library is great, Flustered Librarian, Fiendish Circle, and Wicked Shipment. Imp King Rafam still nice. Flame Imp as well, and even Shady Bartender makes the cut in this one, because you could coin him out as soon as turn 4. Like a turn 3 Fiendish Circle into a turn 4 Shady Bartender, some opponents just simply cannot deal with that. Mischievous Imp, still decent, but the rest is kinda on the downside, even though, again, Bloodbound Imp is definitely a very well-statted minion to be having on turn 2. For other good Warlock decks, you're gonna have to scroll quite a while till you find something different than Imp Warlock, but there's actually a very different Imp Warlock variant here, which is also utilizing the curses, as well as the new legendary Lady Darkbane. Phylactery Warlock is also usable right now, even though the win rate is far from what it is for the Imp Warlock variants. And we still have the 40 card Curse Warlocks, which are very much below 50% win rate. So I'd say stick around with Imp Warlock for now. On the number 4 spot we have Ram Druid, which definitely received a lot of cool new tools. The big win condition for this deck is the Sire Denathrius, which you could double up with your Brand Bronzebeard. And you could also counterplay your opponent if they actually manage to steal your Denathrius with your Feotar. You could do the same and steal it right back. We're also running the new Insatiable Devourer in this one, so again, positioning your minions accordingly would definitely matter when playing against the Druids, and you would definitely want to be utilizing the natural separation your location will be giving you, just so you can manage to play around the cleave eat of the Insatiable Infused Devourer. We also have Kael'thas in this one so you can cheat out minions faster. and the new Wild Bloom Seedsman is a pretty nice inclusion for Ram Druid again. Matchup wise from Diamond to Legend, Imp Warlock is gonna be insanely OP against you, so maybe it's not such a great choice for you if you're seeing too many of those, and same goes for Face Hunter and Naga Priest. Which is kinda surprising that this Druid has such a good win rate, given the fact that this is probably 50% of the opponents you should be facing, but these are the stats. And for the mulligan, when going first and second, Guff and Wild Bloom Seedsman are always gonna be great, same with Jerry Rig Carpenter, Wild Growth I would assume, and maybe even Innervate, and if you're considering the game is gonna be slow enough, Insatiable Devourer as well as Castle Nathria might make the cut as well. Depending on the matchup, Druid of the Reef might make the cut, but for the rest of the cards, you're gonna have to have a good reason to actually keep him. When on the coin, again, Guff, Denathrius, Seedsman, but even things like Kael'thas and Tapir are gonna be good keeps in this one. Bran becomes a lot more keepable, and even Planted Evidence. Depending on the matchup, you might even consider keeping something like Scale of Onyxia. For other good Druid decks right now, doesn't seem like there are many options. It's either Ram Druid or bust, even though Celestial Druid is still doing pretty good in skilled hands. But as you can see, the overall stats are looking pretty dire. There's also a Death Rattle Druid out there, but the stats are just not there for it. And Prestor Druid is definitely a lot weaker now. And on the number 5 spot, again, we have Evolve Murloc Control Shaman. And this is a 40 card deck that is doing actually very well. You have plenty of cool new cards in this one, including Muck Pools, and even things like Murloc Holmes, which is still a Murloc, so you can fish him out with your Gorlock Ravager. Primordial Wave makes the cut in this one, the Duke as well. Famished Fool gives you a lot of good card draw, and you still have good old MVPs like Snowfall Guardian, and obviously your Brilliant Macaw. At the top of the deck again you have Insatiable Devourer and Sire Denathrius, similar to what Druid is trying to do, but in this deck you don't have a way to actually cheat out this minion alongside Bran, but what you do have is the possibility to go with Bran and Brilliant Macaw after the turn you've used Sire Denathrius, so that is still very powerful. Matchup wise from Diamond to Legend, you can literally see you do not have a bad matchup, which is absolutely insane. Like, I haven't seen stats this good from Diamond to Legend, so this deck definitely has very good potential if you want to be climbing from Diamond to Legend. And people even hit top 10 Legend with it, so there's that. Mulligan wise, going first and second, Schooling is always gonna be an amazing keep. Depending on the matchup, you might also consider keeping something like Sire Denathrius. Amalgam apparently is an okay keep. Glug I wouldn't really consider, and we don't exactly have great stats to support it either. Muck Pools can be pretty good. Stuff like Sleetbreaker and Primal Dungeoneer are also pretty decent, as well as your Clownfish, and in some cases even Gorlock Ravager, so you can start drawing faster. When on the coin, situation is looking kinda all over the place, like Prince Ren et al. That is absolutely insane to even consider it being a keep. Gold Charagnol is a lot better when going second. When going first, you really need to already have Schooling for it to actually ever consider it. Muckpool is still pretty good, Clownfish again, and maybe your infused cards if the matchup is slow enough. Snowfall Guardian might also make sense if you're expecting the matchup to be board-centric, and even something like Famished Fool can help you start infusing it so you really start drawing some good amount of cards. For other good Shaman decks, we also have Evolve Shaman with the 30 card list, and still Denathrius at the top of it. But there's also other different variants with Evolve Shaman, including this one, which is trying to abuse the new Mask Revealer, which didn't really work too well for me, but apparently people are still trying to make it work. It seems like just Murloc Shaman is not doing as amazing anymore, so you might want to stay away from that one. And things like Totem Shaman are yet to be figured out too. For the classes we didn't mention, the best performing deck for Death Rattle Demon Hunter doesn't seem to exist just yet, even though some people started climbing with stuff like Proving Grounds Demon Hunter, which is kind of insane, but they actually made that one work. For Mage, Skeletal Mage, both with the 30 and 40 variant are doing good, and also Big Spell Mage is also doing pretty decently. And you can also see Mech Mage doing nicely, even though the sample size is not too big. For Paladin, so far we don't see too much of it, but Pure Paladin and Holy Paladin are doing somewhat okay. Mech Paladin is nowhere to be seen, which is kinda surprising, but I guess Imp Warlock is just eating it alive. With Rogues, Quest Rogue is actually the best performing Rogue, which is not super amazing for the class if you ask me, and also Mine Rogue and Death Rattle Rogue are still doing somewhat fine, even though the win rate is not that amazing. We can still see some variants of Thief Rogue doing somewhat okay, but for now Boat Rogue is not doing that hot, so there's that. And for Warrior, right now the only working archetype for it would be Enrage Warrior, which is far from optimal, so yeah, probably stay away from the class for now. So that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you wanna be playing in the new Castle Nathria expansion. Thanks for watching, I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.